listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is March 4th, 2024, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, man, I almost flew through March there. That was close.
I know, right? Yeah. Well, we are into March, which is always kind of fulfilling, I feel like. You know, I feel like my least favorite part of the year is over. And also, March means new patch, so that's cool, too. That's our first show of the month. But, yeah, here we are. We're back. It's been, yet another kind of quiet week on the Dragonflight side, but, we're in that window now, right? Like, we know that we're getting a patch this month, and then I think then really the floodgates are going to start opening towards, the end of Dragonflight season roll and everything with season 4. We'll get some info about that probably this month, I would think, after the patch is out the door, and, maybe a PTR and maybe War Within stuff. So there's stuff happening, but everything is still really close to the vest kind of while they're waiting for this, this secret .6 patch to come out.
Yeah, well, it's certainly been a bit of a slow time for Dragonflight, like you said. There's so many things happening around the game, though, that still feels like there's a decent amount to talk about in each episode. And we have, obviously, what's coming up this month in March when it comes to the Traders Tender and all that to talk about. We've got, changes coming in with SOD. We've got, Cataclysm announced as far as Cataclysm Classic stuff coming up soon. Lots of thoughts and opinions on that. There's lots of things to talk about around the game. So I don't feel like we're, running out of stuff to do, but I will say one thing that is not Warcraft related, which is March is actually one of my least favorite times of the year, because what we do here in Canada to combat snow and ice is we dump salt and sand everywhere, which means that everything is really dirty when you hit spring. So I actually dislike spring a lot, because until we get like the street sweepers out and really like clean up the mess that we've made trying to survive winter, it's just a mess outside. So I'm happy to be in here with you all recording a show and talking about some World of Warcraft. So, man, how about what did you get up to this past week in WoW though, Jason? What did you do?
Oh man, it was a real weird week because we had a mega skeleton crew. I mean, I know I've been kind of a broken record on that, but my co-tank was on vacation. He was out with his wife on some, like an actual vacay, which is cool. But so that means we needed somebody to step in and tank. So one of my main healers is like also a very capable and, set up tank. So he's like the obvious choice, except none of my healers are showing up right now. Like one of them has like her PC is just busted. So I don't know. I don't know if she's got it repaired even at this point. So, it was like, so we're going to plug our one main healer that's available into our, main tank slot. Okay. Now what? But we managed to cobble together, a team. I kind of sent some feelers out and had some kind of emergency backups and stuff and people off-speccing or whatever. We did end up, getting a raid in. We didn't have the juice on Tuesday night to kill Heroic Farak. It was the kind of that bad. It's just because, we didn't have a lot of bodies. We didn't have some really heavy hitters and some people in important roles. I mean, without like really capable main healers, like that's a tough fight, man. And I was glad that people were willing to help out and give it a shot, but it just wasn't coming together. I ended up getting my axe drop, or the starter drop, from the normal kill on Tuesday, which was pretty kind of funny. I mean, I figured I would get it this week on Heroic, but the guy who was tanking with me this week, he has like a warrior that he's been bringing to normal, and he doesn't want to he brings his paladin to Heroic, and he's trying to get the axe drop. So of course I get the axe drop from normal. He's on his warrior, and he's going to bring his paladin in for Heroic, and then we didn't kill it on Tuesday. We raided half an hour late on Tuesday and still couldn't put Heroic Farak down. This is a fight we've been just sneezing at for the last 2 months. Managed to cobble a raid together again on Wednesday. Actually, kind of a healthy group. It was kind of a nice group for Wednesday, and we downed Farak pretty quickly, and Paladin Buddy got his axe starter. So it was a happy ending. He didn't have to pug or anything, because that's what it was looking like Tuesday night. But, the people that are still hanging around the team, like, they made it happen. Everybody, showed up and did what they needed to do. So that was cool. I'm glad he got it. For my part, like, dude, I got the starter drop, and when you look at it, it just looks like a weapon. Like the tooltip looks like a weapon. It's got all the things you would expect to have on a weapon, and you equip it. And that's what kind of starts the process of getting the quest to turn into a thing you can use. But when you equip it, like, you start taking like huge ticking shadow flame damage. It was kind of a cool effect, like the way they had it kind of go through. Yeah, I thought it was cool. And then you get starter, like, oh, I got to find somebody who knows more about shadow flame before I can use this or whatever. I didn't log back in. I don't have my axe. I didn't do any of the stuff to turn it from a quest item into an axe. I don't know if I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to use the item. So what is the point of taking the time to do the grind of all the parts you have to do and the expense of all the mats and everything that you need for an item I'm never going to use? I don't know. Maybe towards the end of the expansion, maybe I'll do it just to have it done. And, I don't know. I'll be in a mode where, like, I'm trying to check things off my end of expansion list. So maybe converting the quest item into the weapon will be on that list. But I legit, like, I did nothing with it at all because it's like, I can't use it. I don't play Fury. I don't play arms for any purpose. I never even spec in to do outdoor stuff. I just like to play prot. So I'm glad I got the drop just because it's like a thing off the list and that's not on my brain anymore. I'm really glad that my paladin buddy got it because he's, he does play Ret and he's been looking for it. So I was glad that he got that off his list. One really cool thing that actually I forgot to put in my little note here, but because we're on a skeleton crew, I cleaned up in terms of loot drops because I was still looking for Farok trinkets. So I got the Augury of Primal Flame from the DPS trinket. I got that from the normal kill, which is actually on the hero track because it's like a higher rank. And I've been looking for that forever. Obviously, it's a very contested item, and it's technically an off-spec role for me. Like, I've been in arms loot spec for weeks and weeks trying to get this thing. Kept losing it to people who then stopped showing up to raid. It's an incredible item. Like, for a tank, it's my top damage spell on most fights, and it's set and forget. I'm not even doing anything. It's incredible in dungeons, like a game changer. It's like my highest overall spell in a Keystone dungeon. So that was really fun to get that and finally and be able to mess with it and like going into raid and I run that and the Cataclysmic Signet brand together. Those are my like I don't even bother running tank trinkets in like normal or heroic raid, just like blowing stuff up with trinket damage. That's really fun. So that was cool. And then on the heroic kill, I ended up getting a myth track, Tainted Rageheart, the tank trinket, which is, I mean, for dungeons, like when you're doing, up into the 20s, like having that emergency valve button is so important. So getting that a couple item levels higher was really cool. Those were like really two of the last things on my list that I wanted to have just to be able to play with. I had the hero track, Rageheart, the tank trinket, but I wanted to, I wanted the 489 one. Why not? And the augury was just something I've been shooting for a long time and hoping I could get it either out of the vault or win a roll on it. And I didn't play a lot with it, but it paid off huge. Like, it's such a super powerful item. Ended up doing a bunch of keys. I did get like 4 keys in over 2 nights, which was fun. Not really pushing anything, just doing kind of low 20s, but had a good time. It was just fun getting together and playing with people and doing stuff. I mean, it's been a light couple of weeks, so it was nice. This was Wednesday, right? Because we only had the one boss. I think we one-shot it. So, 15 minutes after we got together, we're done. So we spent, a couple hours doing some keys, and that was cool. Unfortunately, I don't think anybody was around who needed teleports or whatever, so it's not like we were knocking those out for people, but it was still fun, and it was really cool to be able to use the augury trinket for that. So a little bit of a heavier WoW week for me than the last couple have been, but still just kind of in, maintenance mode, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the maintenance mode happening. It's exciting you actually got yourself some key little pieces of loot that are going to make even Mythic Plus a little bit more fun. And I do think the completionist in you will probably eventually finish off the axe and have that and make it look cool and, probably goof around with it a little bit here and there, but nothing that's, you're not going to be running high keys or something like that as Fury or Arms or anything anytime soon. I don't see that happening, but, I do think that it's good you had a more positive week around the game, even though, your numbers are dwindling off a little bit raid-wise, which is to be expected. So for me, I again, have sort of gone into retail and done a little maintenance mode stuff that I want to do. Something I actually didn't do until just today was actually check out the Trader's Tender vendor stuff for for what's going on for March. And so we'll talk about that later in this episode too. There's some pretty exciting stuff in there for me that I really like the look of, and we'll probably spend some tender on for sure. It's definitely a motivator to get in there and crank out a lot more of the currency for the month. I will say I was not someone in February who was like, I really need this end of the month transmog for completing all the Traders Tender. That just wasn't something that appealed to me very much. So I wasn't as keen on completing that and getting all that done and getting that transmog in. Whereas this month, I think that there's just enough stuff in there that I want that I'll probably be more keen on just completing it passively, even though the Sky Captain's look or whatever it is that's in there is not something that's really grabbing me in a big way. So we'll talk about that a bit later. But that's on my list of things. What I did end up doing is stepping into Nomergon a couple of times, last Thursday and then on Sunday again. And man, that raid is still something you can do in an hour and 10 minutes easily. You can get it down below an hour, which is great. I'm very happy to see that. I think that is still the right window of duration to run. They've added teleporters throughout it, so it is substantially easier to sort of move around and recover from wipes and things like that, which is really nice to see. There are tier pieces for those who haven't looked at the loot stuff yet. So there's actually like a tier token that drops that you go to a vendor and buy whatever you want to buy with it off the vendor, whether it's different DPS specs, different healing spec items off the vendor. They have their own type of irradiated tier that drops. So there's like irradiated gear that you can get that lowers your stamina but gives you other benefits, or lowers your strength but gives you other benefits. And you get like an irradiated debuff on yourself and a bunch of other stuff. It's kind of a neat concept, the Kiss Curse happening with that set. So there's some people who really like that. Lots of epics for people to sort of get loot-wise too. And then when it comes to the layout, the layout's pretty much the same as any Nomergon run you'd normally go through. The difference is obviously the bosses and what the bosses do. So the first boss pretty much does the exact same thing as we'd expect, with, trogs pouring out of the walls, and you have to defeat all the trogs against the walls, and then one big trog comes out and you defeat the big trog. There was nothing super special or unique about that. You work your way through to the different bosses. The last few bosses obviously do have large changes to them. And I do think they're good. I don't want to spoil stuff for too many people, because I'm sure there's more people who are still going to be getting into it, especially with the changes coming next week. There'll be a lot more people leveling up and diving into this stuff. But it's content that I think is worth doing. It certainly is worthwhile gear-wise. Gear-wise, I still think SOD is in a really strange spot. I think it's weird that my character basically got 0 upgrades while leveling, hit max level, walked into the new raid, and was viable for the new raid. That felt very weird to me. And now I'm basically just waiting to get upgrades from the new raid to replace my old raid gear, which I've been getting. They still have a quest item off the last boss. This time it's for different necks that you can get. So I got that item and was able to get a really nice MP5 and healing increased neck. So that's been good. The one tuning thing I would mention about it is I do think that it's a little punishing on healers. I think overall, the raid itself is in a good spot as far as balancing goes for DPS, things like that. The last couple of fights have enough AoE damage or are punishing enough if anyone makes any mistake at all that it's really easy to run your healers out of mana. Now, initially the group that was clearing this place for our guild was 2 priests is what they were running, and priests are very overpowered in general as far as their healing goes. So I don't know if they were having as many mana issues as they were, but I definitely had the feeling that I had when I was mythic raiding of, oh, this is a puzzle I have to solve about how I'm optimizing when I use my innervate and when I'm using a potion, and the potion has a 2-minute cooldown, so I use it early enough I can get a second potion in the fight, and like those sorts of things start to come to mind. And I think that's probably a little higher difficulty wise than you'd want for content like this. I don't think you'd want to be putting too many people in a position where they need to micromanage things like that as closely for difficulty. So I do think that there are some fights that could probably get tuned down a little bit damage wise, or at least I'd see them shortened a bit, or like there's different, I guess shortened a bit being they reduce the health of the bosses so the fight doesn't go on as long. You push through phases faster. I could see that happening to sort of help meet that goal. Now it's still, I wouldn't say super early, but it's still reasonably early in these lockouts. Once I'm substantially more raid geared and way more familiar with the fights, I'm sure it won't be nearly as big of a deal for me. But I still think that that's probably a tuning note that they can take for that stuff. So good to see Nomer and good to see what they're doing with SOD. And I'm excited for the changes coming up for folks who are looking to get into it, but didn't really want to get through the slog of the leveling process and all of that stuff. So I'm excited. Even the cost, I went from having like 90 gold to having 7 gold because I bought my mount training and bought my mount, and then suddenly you're broke. So sort of figuring that stuff out, and even them reducing costs on that would be nice. So seeing that coming in next week, I think will be super exciting. Yeah. All right, with that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft. All right, this week is the World Quest bonus event. We mean the Sign of the Emissary buff is up, increasing reputation gains from World Quest by 50%, and this applies to all expansions that have World Quest. So if there's any expansion that you are trying to rep up in, we always mention Legion because it had the most rewards from their bags for completing your Paragon bags for maxing out a reputation after you'd already maxed out a reputation. You can get yourself mounts, pets, those sorts of rewards. Obviously, this means you can pick up the quest. You can pick up the quest and get out there in Valdrakken and get yourself enough World Quest done, which is 10, to get yourself some additional rep bonuses to the factions of your choice, including Loam, Niffin, and Dream Wardens. So you can get yourself some Dream Wardens rep this way too. If you're still trying to max out those ones. I really like, if Loam Niffin is something you're still working on, this particular week, because you can pick up this quest, do 10 World Quests, pick up the weekly quest for Loam Niffin, which requires reputation gain. And basically by completing this World Quest bonus event, you then complete your Aiding the Accord at the same time, getting 3k rep. You complete the Loam Niffin weekly, getting the 2500 rep for them. And all of that gets completed at the same time. It's super easy to do. So it's a great week to hop in, pick up this quest, pick up the Loam Niffin quest, pick up the Aiding the Accord quest, and just do 10 World Quests. And you just knock all that out at the same time, and it feels really good. So definitely take advantage of the weekly event for World Quest bonus event, because it's super helpful when it comes to catching up and getting some more reputation.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing basically my weekly kind of routine that I do on my main at this point is just sort of Emerald Dream, and I'll go out there and I'll do my weekly Emerald Bounty, I'll do my weekly Super Bloom, and I'll do the Worthy Ally out there, and by the time I get done all that stuff, I'm usually done Aiding the Accord too. And this week it'll be super easy to do that with the extra World Quest rep. So yeah, this is a really good a good week if you need to catch up on stuff like that. I mean, the same concept applies to Loam Niffin if you just didn't really play Season 2 or 10.1 a lot, and you need that stuff. Like, there's plenty of quests down there to roll up over the course of the week. So if you're not doing them like on a daily basis, you can just load them all up on, reset day, get the extra bonus and get the big bonus item at the end. I'm glad that it took them a while. I think part of the problem here was that throughout 10.1, you couldn't choose Loam Niffin as the reward for this. But then when Season 3 came out, then they rolled it in along with Dream Wardens. And I feel like Dream Wardens rep is pretty generous anyway. So, there's just so many opportunities to get it. There's so many activities that grant so much of it. And, but yeah, it's not like the most, I don't know, engaging or super cool event possible. But, I have those moments of like, should I bother doing Worthy Ally and Aiding the Accord this week? Should I do my Emerald Dream Lab? I guess. I mean, there's still some transmog pieces I want from the one vendor. I guess I'll do it. Yep. So yeah, but so stuff like this makes it less painless, or less painful. Yeah. I mean to say, like, the bar is just that much lower. You'll get there faster, and then also that means I'll have more rep tokens that I can move around to alts. I really haven't been touching my alts very much the last patch or so, but it's always an option. It's out there. I have like a giant on my monk. I've just been sending my monk my rep tokens for months, a year. Like, once it was maxed, because the Paragon bags aren't very good in Dragonflight, in my opinion. The Dream Wardens one is okay, but I earn a lot of Dream Wardens rep because that's the content that I'm doing every week. So the tokens that I get, I usually have at least 1 or 2 to hand off. So I got a ton of them on the monk, and that'll come in handy probably in like Season 4. Part of the problem with the alt thing for me is like, we're close enough to the end, but we're not quite there yet, where it's like it's not time yet. you know, because I don't want to incrementally just do all this. I want my alls to be like, I don't know, set up for the end of Dragonflight, right? And like into War Within or whatever. I don't really play them that much anyway, so doing these little incremental jumps where it's like every patch or every .5 patch, I'm doing this. I just kind of got sick of it after a couple.
Right.
But, you know, once season 4 rolls around and we're like looking at the real end game of Dragonflight forever, it's like, okay, this is the as much power as you could get before the next expansion. That's when it's like, okay, let me just use up these tokens. Let me do my weeklies on my monk or whatever. Oh, he's all done now. Okay, now I can pass stuff off to the druid or whatever. So that, you know, that's pretty cool the way that works. It does make me think though, like when we move into War Within and we have war bands and we have like everything that's account wide can be, some of the stuff kind of needs to be rethought a little bit. I think, you know, the big benefit right now in Dragonflight is you have that account wide, you have the like account bound token once you're maxed out on Renown. And it's like, oh, your Paragon bags aren't very good, but you can move your rep around. You're not going to need to move your rep around in War Within, so hopefully we get some cool bonuses for stuff like Paragon or something similar to that concept, you know, that kind of weekly solo pursuit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to have that thing to chase, and I think the current thing to chase, reputation-wise, is not super exciting. I think Legion was kind of their pinnacle so far, which is why we keep mentioning it, of when they actually had Paragon bags where people were like, dude, I want to get reputation done. I am in there every single chance I get getting reputation, particularly during events like these, where you're just clearing the map every day of RogueQuest because you want to get Paragon bags because there's some really fun, neat rewards out of Paragon bags. And, you know, that's something that we just don't see very much. And I could bring this conversation all the way back to, you know, augment runes, where it's like, all right, what if Paragon bags had loads of augment runes in them? Like, you know, 20 or 25 or 30 or something augment runes in them, people would be doing it just to get that. And that would be something to chase. But they need something to chase to really do that. So without having those things, it sort of drops off a bit. But either way, it's a good week for people to catch up. It's an easy week to get your weekly stuff done. Take advantage of the RogueQuest stuff while you can. The world boss for this week, obviously, is still Orastar the Hibernator, off in the Emerald Dream, Big Rune Bear. You can get yourself some loot off of that if that's something you're looking to catch up on. Pretty easy to find groups early in the week for Orastar, so be sure you're knocking him out. The Mythic Plus affixes for the week are Fortified, Afflicted, and Raging, meaning non-boss enemies have more health and deal increased damage. While in combat, afflicted souls periodically appear and seek the aid of nearby players. These souls can either be fully healed or they can be dispelled. And non-boss enemies enrage at 30% health remaining, temporarily granting them immunity to crowd control effects. Okay, so it's a trash week. It's just, you know, you're accepting that it's a trash week. Raging is substantially less of an affix than it used to be, which is great. Obviously, you can control when an ad drops below 30% health. You know it's going to be immune to crowd control effects. You know you might need to switch and target down some heavier casters or heavier, you know, damaging mobs that you need to be able to CC. In general, AoE can become a little bit more risky because it gives tanks a little bit less options for kiting, things like that. But in general, it is a substantially easier affix to deal with than some of the other ones that we see out there. Afflicted, obviously afflicted souls, thankfully, aren't really that affected by Fortified. Yes, they have more health, which means technically if you're trying to heal them up, then it's going to take longer to heal them up inside some situations by a small margin. However, the dispelling is the best way to go, like by far. It's substantially less globals. It's a lot easier to do. It's something DPS can contribute to. You really want your healers saving their dispels for certain debuffs inside the raid. That's kind of the big thing, is you want your healers focused on your group and you want your healers focused on what sort of debuffs they're dealing with. And hopefully you have DPS, which I guess will bring Jason back around to the conversation about, hey, I wish some of these affixes were less specific and there were more options for bringing more varieties of classes with you. Because this is a week where if you have a Dispel as a DPS, like, you're in, right? Like, that's a big, easy grab for a lot of these DPS. So I do think that that's an unfortunate thing about Afflicted, but it's a trash week, right? I mean, bosses are going to fall over. Fortified mobs are going to be, you know, higher health trash. You're going to have to deal with Afflicted while you're dealing with bosses and while you're dealing with trash. But they're not nearly as hard to deal with as some of the other affixes. They're just something you have to pay attention to and have your dispels ready for, and be sure your group's ready for when it comes to that. So, Jason, what do you think about this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty fair assessment of it. Afflicted is weird because I feel like it's more comp dependent even than incorporeal is. There are different ways to deal with incorporeal. You can just sit there and dedicate interrupts to it, or soft CC like stuns. There's like pocket strats like DK control undead and stuff like that. And I don't know if you want to rely on that on a consistent basis, but it does work with afflicted. Like, okay, for example, like I play a warrior. I have a really bad option that I can use against incorporeal, but it works. Okay, like I don't want to do it. I don't want to have my team rely on me to be doing it. I can't actually because it's a 3-minute cooldown on the ability, right? Like, it's not going to be sufficient for us to complete the dungeon. With afflicted, there's literally nothing I could do to participate. I can't heal the thing. I can't dispel it. I have nothing. I have no tools. But, so I feel like this week is way more comp dependent. And the other thing is, afflicted, I feel like the difference with a really good comp for it and like a not so great comp for it is very stark. Like I was doing some keystones with my Resto Shaman buddy, and I was like, hey man, afflicted next week. And he was like, oh yeah, because Poison Cleanse Totem is just busted good against this ability, Like, yes, are there situations where you might want to like cleanse a poison off of a teammate? Like, yeah, but the cooldowns even kind of line up okay. So it's like afflicted's out, drop Poison Cleanse Totem, done. Nobody even has to think about it.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, compare that to a warrior which literally can't do anything about it, or there are some DPS like paladins have, they can cleanse the stuff, and that's like super useful. I mean, hell, they could even like lay on hands it or whatever if it's an emergency. I don't know. Afflicted I like afflicted better than incorporeal, I think, overall, because it's sort of more in that kind of pocket where if your comp works out well for it, it's very low impact.
Yeah.
Whereas incorporeal can be kind of messy, even with a good comp. But either way, I don't like either of those affixes very much, and I feel like they put too much pressure on group building, and you have to make sure that you're, you have to make like the correct meta choice before you walk into the dungeon in terms of your comp and each individual player's build. Which just makes it a worse affix than something like entangling in that +7 slot, right? Like, it's just not even comparable.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to highlight was this is in the earlier slot, right? As far as affixes go, if I remember correctly. I generally do things that are high enough. Yeah. So like you would get fortified obviously fairly early, but then you get afflicted before you get raging. And I feel like that is wrong. I feel like it's in the wrong pool of what you get affected by, because that means even at lower keys, there's a pressure for someone who's creating the key to make sure they have people who have dispels or can off heal or whatever it is to try and deal with this affix, or just a lot more pressure on a healer inside a situation like that, even at lower end keys. So I think it's probably in the wrong pool. I think afflicted needs to be afflicted and raging should switch spots. They should be in the opposite pools.
Yeah, it's a little weird, right? Like I think afflicted is kind of designed to be like a lower impact thing because it's just more maintenance-y. It's like you have to pay attention to this and make sure it doesn't happen. Whereas raging could literally just kill you by itself.
It could,
but in practice, like it doesn't really work that way, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not. That's not my experience playing these last 2 Keystone seasons. But overall, like I don't think this is a bad week as long as you have your afflicted in order. As long as you have an answer for what do you do when the afflicteds pop, then this is a pretty good week. I mean, What you said about raging, for sure, like raging used to be pretty scary.
Yeah.
And it's kind of not anymore. I mean, now you have fortified trash, and so it's going to be alive longer in that 30% window, right? It's just a bigger health pool at sub 30% health remaining. So it'll be alive longer. It's going to be hitting harder. You can still just straight up kick casts and stuff like that. So if you have like a caster mob that's particularly nasty, you can still kick that volley or whatever. You just are not going to be able to stun it, but you can soothe the enrage off, and then it just doesn't even exist anymore. So then you can stun the mob or whatever you need to do.
Right.
It's not any kind of stacking thing where, I don't know, they start like doing more and more damage or getting more and more health the more stuff that you're killing off. it used to be like you have to be careful because when raging kicks in, like you better have a button for your tank or they're just going to get nuked. It doesn't work like that anymore. So the only thing I would say, I guess, like you will get afflicted during boss fights, even though it's a trash week. That will happen. So you have to be ready for those. Raging's a non-factor for boss fights. There's minor synergy with Ford afflicted raging because you're going to be in combat longer, so you might have more afflicted spawns. You have more occurrences of afflicted during like high pressure trash situations, and then also kind of the synergy I was talking about with raging, and they're going to be alive longer in that raging window. So it's not like, I don't know. It's not like a freebie this week, but I don't think it's bad either. Like this is a fine combo. You just got to make sure. Really, the biggest thing is don't go in without a plan for afflicted, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Darkmoon Faire has kicked off. It's currently live. It's going to be live through March 9th. So take advantage of your extra reputation and experience gain you can get from riding the carousel or the roller coaster, depending on which one you want to do. There's obviously all of the minigame stuff going on. All of this stuff has traders tender rewards. There's Darkmoon Faire traders tender rewards for doing stuff at the fair, so be sure you're picking that up. There's races to do, achievements to get. There's pet battle tokens to earn. There's Darkmoon Faire tokens to earn. Buy yourself a dirigible, all sorts of fun stuff. And of course, professions. If you're someone who is skilling up professions at all, these are free points. Be sure you get the free points for doing profession stuff. Something that's actually often overlooked that, man, SOD kind of reminded me of is the Sages buffs. If you're someone who's leveling up a character, feel free to talk to the Sages at Darkmoon Faire. Get yourself your fortune told, and you'll end up with a buff. There are a couple hours that can be like just a straight damage increase or straight stat increase that you're looking for. So that's also a fun thing to get when you're out in the world leveling. So be sure you're taking advantage of that stuff too. Okay, we have Hearthstone's
also good synergy with the weekly buff for World Quest.
Yes.
So if you're trying to get that last mount out of the Legion Paragon bag, don't forget that that's sitting there too.
Yeah, that does in fact stack. You do get the extra 10% on top of the 50%. That is something that happens. So be sure you're getting both of those lined up if you're trying to get some reputation goals done. Good call. Hearthstone's 10th anniversary is happening. It feels weird. Feels like it's been longer than 10 years. It's one of those times to me where it feels like it's been at least 15 years for Hearthstone.
I can't believe it's been 10 years. I'm
really?
Like, where did it go, man? I remember, I remember beta and all that, and I mean, we've both been in Hearthstone pretty much from the beginning. But I don't know. You just blink, man. I don't know where it all goes. I feel like we're just doing WoW's 10th anniversary, and now it's the 20th coming up. So Hearthstone was the new kid on the block. It seems like just a minute ago, but 10 years, man.
No, I think I've been aware enough of Hearthstone with all the different game modes and everything that they've done over the years, and the different storytellings, and they had like a whole bunch of story campaigns to do, and choose your own adventure things they did, and all sorts of stuff they did with Hearthstone that I feel like I can see it's been 10 years. I feel like it.
Yeah. What do you think about all the different modes and all the different kind of content they put in it, all the different formats and sets over the, when I start thinking about it, it's like, oh yeah,
it's been a while.
It's been a long time since the Great Tournament came out.
Exactly. Yeah. Since Firebat won the first Worlds.
Grand Tournament. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or the early experiments with the single player stuff and. When
Raynad came up with Zudek, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, the real early days of the esport and everything. I think it was really fun to see because the game was very simple back then, and there was a lot of community enthusiasm for it. So we're all learning how to play it from those examples, and those kind of really basic archetypes. And now the game is so much more complex, and there's so many different modes and ways to play it. It's just been, it came out when we were still in Pandaria.
Yep.
It was like the tail end of Pandaria, and a lot of the launch stuff was like Pandaria themed, So that's if that sets the stage for how long we've been playing Hearthstone.
That makes it feel a lot longer because Pandaria was a long
right? Yeah. Pandaria feels longer ago than Hearthstone was. And I mean, now granted, it was like the final 6 months or whatever of 8 months of Pandaria, but. But still, that was the era of WoW, and eras of WoW are sort of how I mentally arranged my life experience.
When did I have my kids? All right, it was during this expansion.
It was during Legion. Yeah, right. that's how it goes when you're like we are. But I don't know. I've been with Hearthstone. I mean, I play Hearthstone weekly still. Same. 10 years on.
I was playing earlier today because it is the 10th anniversary and there's a bunch of rewards, so I've been trying to earn all the rewards that I wanted to earn. But it's a crossover event, guys. That's what we're talking about on the show. For those who are like, man, this is a World of Warcraft show. I know Hearthstone's World of Warcraft associated, but like, come on. So from March 11th to the 18th, you can actually seek out special Hearthstone matches in capital cities inside of World of Warcraft. And if you stick around long enough, you're going to face an encounter where you have to defeat iconic minions, and you get to add that to your deck and earn other like fun Hearthstone themed rewards from defeating these things in game. So that's one of the rewards that you can get, is this sort of like weird crossover where you fight something in game, and I imagine it's going to be, I don't know, Leroy or something that you're fighting in game, and then suddenly you'll be able to add a bunch of iconic cards to your Hearthstone collection if that's something you're looking to do. If you're like, hey, that's great, but I don't really play Hearthstone that much, so why should I care? All you have to do is log into Hearthstone starting on March 11th. If on March 11th you log into Hearthstone, you get a free mount. They're putting the Hearthsteed back out there for people to get. This one's going to be the fiery Hearthsteed. The last Hearthsteed was blue. This Hearthsteed obviously is fiery, so you can imagine that it's red with red wings and red fire. Basically the same Hearthsteed, except it's red. So if that's something that you're looking to get, you just have to log into the game. Hearthstone is free. You can literally download it for free, and you can just open the game and then close the game again. And if you have an authenticator on your account and a bunch of stuff, you'll get a whole bunch of mounts and things like that for the first time opening Hearthstone. So it's worth just downloading and opening if that's something you're wanting to do. If you don't play it very often, because it's certainly going to be a limited time benefit for people to be able to get that Hearthsteed. It looks like the limited time offer for those who log in is between the 11th and 14th. So it's kind of a tight window for those wanting to get...
No, it's May 14th.
Oh, it's May 14th. Oh my God, you're right.
2 months for the mount. Now the in-game event in WoW is only a week.
Right.
But the promo period to get the Fiery Hearthsteed is like two months. So you get a nice window there if you want to check out Hearthstone. Yeah. And you don't even have to win games. The old blue Hearthsteed, you had to win 3 games or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man, I remember when that was like, oh, how am I going to do this? I'm never going to get this mount, man. Like, this is going to take like 17 games.
There were no support sites back then. You were basically like seeing what other people were doing and asking them to help you make a deck. Yeah.
Yeah. There was no HS replay back then. There was no Hearthstone or anything like that. There was no Vicious Syndicate. We were just out in the wilderness watching streams going, I think that's in this guy's list.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been waiting 10 years for the Fiery Hearthsteed. Yeah, I think the data for the mount was mined like back when. It was like, oh, there's a new Hearthsteed. I wonder when that's going to come out. And the answer is March 11th, 2024. So I don't think they've done enough crossover promos between like WoW and Hearthstone over the years. Like they used to do a bunch, there was some different benefits, like for do stuff in WoW and earn stuff in Hearthstone, or play Hearthstone and get WoW stuff. And I mean, they're both Warcraft games. I think there's a lot of crossover between people who are interested because it's the same universe and everything. And so I'm glad that they're doing this, and I mean, we'll get more next week and probably the week after once we actually have time to play it, into what the event was like and the in-game stuff in WoW. But really cool promo, so check it out. And I mean, I don't know. I haven't been out of Hearthstone like really ever since it came out, but I have the impression that like if you're like a new account, you get a ton of freebies for checking it out in terms of card packs and pre-built decks and promo stuff. So it's cool. I'm glad that they're doing that.
If you have Twitch Prime, you're obviously getting a whole bunch of free packs and stuff from that too. So just in general, it's a free mount. If you just have really bad internet and it takes you a month to download the game, that's fine. You can open the game. You have 2 months to do it to get that mount. So hop on in and grab it. All right, notable hotfixes for the week. The maximum number of follower dungeons that a player can enter in a 24-hour period has been increased to 50 from 10. So yeah, they apparently have determined that the degenerate behavior that they were worried about happening and DDoSing all their servers is safe enough to try increasing. So we're seeing what happens with 50 now as far as that limit goes. So if you're someone who wants to do an absolutely obscene number of dungeons or do 5 dungeons on, 10 different characters, you can do that now. Because this was across accounts, remember, right? So this was 24-hour period across accounts, which is not very hard to get 10 in a day. But 50, I think, sounds like a pretty big number. And I think that's a decent number to increase to see what people think and where that sort of ends up as far as how server performance handles it. There are also, the presence of followers in dungeons no longer decreases the experience earned by human players. So you having 2 real people versus 3 real people versus no real people no longer affects the amount of experience you gain. It used to, obviously, you earned less experience by soloing things to try and encourage people to play with other players. They've now removed that. I think this is, again, a smart choice. I don't think you should, for normal dungeons and for leveling up and that kind of idea, punish people for just queuing with the AI and just wanting to do their own thing. Keep in mind, a lot of the time when people queue for dungeons right now, there's no communication, and it really is as though you're just playing with other AI, and they kind of treat each other as though they're other AI inside of the dungeon, and there isn't even like a thanks at the end of the group. People just leave. So I don't know if you're going to necessarily notice a big difference in some of the people's experience in this. I like to say hello and how are you and that kind of thing, but very rarely do I get a back and forth conversation happening with pugs. It just isn't a thing. So yeah, I think that's an absolutely fine change as well.
Yeah, I think they wanted to be really safe with how they rolled out follower dungeons.
Yeah, agreed.
Right? They wanted to make sure that they weren't going to blow up their own servers. They wanted to, I don't know, just discourage or prevent people from really having some kind of exploit loop for like how many dungeons they were doing and how much XP they were getting. And now we've had the feature for a little while, right? A couple months, or give or take. Maybe not quite a couple months yet, but it's been in the game for a good few weeks now, and they can obviously see how people are interacting with the feature and how it's being used. So I don't know. This is the kind of thing that if they reverse course on this and they came out and said, listen, our servers are getting dinged, but the real problem is that we're just seeing people exploit this, and we don't want this to be the case, and we don't want the only leveling path to be solo queuing follower done. Like, you know, that's a gameplay decision at that point. You know, I think if they have the tech to handle the demand in terms of spinning up the dungeons and stuff, then fine. And if they decide that it's not supposed to be the way that you earn XP, okay. But I do think that's a little, if that, like, to me, from a game design standpoint, if that's the case, then why even have the follower dungeons, right? Like, it's supposed to be kind of a sterile environment for people to practice. It only affects normal dungeons right now. So what good is it if it's not a level up tool also, you know? Like, I think it has to be part of the puzzle there. Otherwise, it's not a very attractive offering. So, you know, I'll be interested to see. This is, I mean, we talked about it a lot when I was coming in. It's kind of, you know, something other games have and have done for a long time, but it was a pretty huge feature addition to WoW. And, you know, what's going to happen? How are people going to really use it or interact with it? And that's stuff that, you know, we're just seeing the beginnings of now. So I think these are good changes. And obviously, I don't think they would be making them if they weren't confident that it was a good time to do so. You know, I don't think they would do it just to do it. They obviously feel like they can handle the load, and that they want it to be part of that leveling experience for people if that's how they choose to play.
Yeah, I think that's really the best way, is to support players in whatever way that they're choosing to play the game and experience the game. I know people who really just didn't play the game with anyone for a very, very long time and never had an interest or anything in really exploring dungeon groups or anything like that, because it required interacting with other people, and that's just not how they wanted to play the game. They wanted to just experience it on their own and do their own thing, and that's what they enjoyed. So I think, you know, this at least opens up the doors to a lot of this content and storytelling that has been in the game for a long time, and I don't see a problem with it on the difficulties that they're proposing for players to be able to do it. So yeah. Okay, WoW Classic, Season of Discovery, got some fixes in. Well, actually, before I do that, I just want to mention this one thing. They fixed an issue that was stopping players from queuing for a Wrathy Blizzard. So if you're someone who's like, I want to do the Brawl, and they couldn't do the Brawl, it's apparently been resolved. If you're someone who hasn't logged in for the rest of the week or didn't really try again after you tried earlier in the week, that's all fixed. But as far as Season Discovery goes, they've done a bunch of hot fixes to items and tier sets and things like that. Nothing that's going to, like, oh my goodness, I'm going to notice this absolutely immediately, except for a few things here, like slow effects can now be removed with snare removal effects. So the high yield radiation bomb was something that was slowing people down, and then you couldn't, like, shapeshift out of it, or you couldn't use your gnomish snare removal to sort of get out of that slow and remove it. That's been fixed so that you can now actually do that properly. This was something that certainly affected players when they're playing against other players. So just keep that in mind. They also made it so Kadamu's Blood Craze no longer increases his damage dealt, which I think is also great because it makes it much more survivable when you're dealing with him. So that's nice for people. The initial damage of the bomb for the high yield radiation bomb now works on enemies that are typically immune to slows, which is also really nice. So if you actually want to do damage, you can still do the damage. And then we dig into some of these class tuning fixes and changes. This is stuff that was super excited to sort of see them working on, and certainly chose to heal on my character this week with these things in mind, because I definitely wanted to sort of like get into the habit of it, if you will. Life Bloom's mana cost reduced by 50%. Now, it's not actually reduced by 50%. The minute so that Life Bloom refunds half of its new base mana per stack, so mana cost per stack, when it expires or is dispelled. So basically, it is an initial investment that then gives you back mana when the actual thing pops. So I think that's a neat way of doing it, where it encourages people to actually keep those stacks rolling and still get the mana back, but without reducing the front end of the mana. I think it's kind of an interesting choice. The developer's note here says this part has always functioned this way, and we've seen a bit of confusion around the mana return portion of Life Bloom's functions. So they're saying that it's always functioned and that you always get this mana back as far as how this works, but they're actually doing it. I'm confused. Jason, do you read this note and feel like they're saying that this change is more just a clarification?
That's what they're saying, but I'm not really sure what they're clarifying, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with
like,
you. I feel like regardless, you're going to get 50% of your mana back is what it's supposed to be. I'm confused as to whether they're saying like, hey, this was always supposed to be this way, and now it's fixed, or whether they're saying, hey, this always worked this way, but we're just making sure everyone knows, and this is a really weird thing to do it inside of a hotfix. So either way, I've started using Life Bloom a lot more, and I'm hoping that...
Are you noticing like a lower upfront mana cost when you use it, or does this feel the same?
It feels the same upfront, but I'm wondering if I'm getting mana back, which I think I am, passively through that. So I need to go back and look at logs for, raids, which I haven't done for a long time, but people have been logging our SOD raids, which still feels really weird to me. But hey, if you're doing it, I'll take advantage and look at them and clarify things like this, because I when I saw this note, I was excited about it, and then it was weird that they ended all with like, there's a bit of confusion, it's always worked this way, and you're like, I don't think this is how it's always worked, but okay, sure. Well, we'll go with that. I guess I'm one of the confused people, and your note confused me more.
Well, also then why are you telling us that you reduced the cost by 50% if it's just you're just telling us how it works? This is one of those that even with the developer's note, it's like it's a little hard to parse this out, like just from what they write without looking at behavior and numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Living Seed now heals for 50% of the critical heal that planted the seed was 30%. So this heal now blooms for non-periodic healing received in addition to any damage taken. And they're reducing Nourish's mana cost by 27%, which is huge, because Nourish basically replaces, as a glyph, as a rune, it replaces Healing Touch in a lot of ways, because it not only is more efficient as far as mana usage to healing done than Healing Touch, it does increased healing based off of the other hots that you have on the target, so it can actually heal for a lot more, and that's another exciting one that we get to see. Fury of Stormrage, this rune, they say when this rune makes Healing Touch instant and now also makes it castable in all shapeshift forms. So this is big too. This is when you're casting Wrath, you have a chance to get a free Healing Touch, not free as in doesn't cost anything, free as in it's instant cast. And so this is basically for Moonkin saying, hey, if you're choosing to run Fury of Stormrage, which is a great rune because your Wrath, which is one of your primary damaging spells, doesn't cost mana, which means it conserves all your mana for all the other things that you want to cast. You now get to Healing Touch people for free, which is really cool. And you can cast them while you're actually inside of your Moonkin form, because they also made it so that Moonkins can cast non-healing restoration spells without canceling their shapeshift form. So you get to do that with Remove Curse, Remove Poison, Abolish Poison, Innervate, Rebirth, Revive, Mark of the Wild, and Gift of the Wild. So it will pull you out when you cast a Healing Touch, but you can just switch back in, which is not too bad, I suppose. In case of emergencies, it's super helpful for people to have. I still think spells like Rebirth need to have their mana costs adjusted and reduced. Rebirth right now costs 800 mana. That is a third of my mana pool. I think that is excessive for a spell. So I do think they need to revisit some of that. Because basically we ran into a situation last night where we were wiping because healers are having trouble with mana. Our healers got enough mana and other people had enough mana to actually rebirth people and bring them back to life, but then they were out of mana. And you're like, okay, well, there was no point in bringing people back to life if I bring you back to life and then I have no mana. So, and using lower rank rebirths just seems foolish because you then have to heal them because they come back to life with very little resource and health anyways. So it's a very strange kind of situation to be in. So that could probably use a little tweak. Which would also be nice to see. And then Nourish is now instant cast when Fury of Stormrage is active. Nourish no longer breaks Moonkin form. So there you go. There's the inspiration for people with Moonkin form to get that rune and use it. When Fury of Stormrage is used to cast an instant version of the spell. So, all right, this means Moonkins, if you wanted to, you could do hybrid healing. You can have yourself Nourish on your bar. You can have the Nourish glyph and be using it and use Fury of Stormrage, and when that procs, you then get to throw free nourishes on people, which is pretty cool to sort of see that happen. So I think that is something else to consider of this weird hybrid heal. It's kind of like how Feral works right now, where there's a lot of shape-shifting involved to actually optimize damage for Feral. So I think cool Druid changes. Lots of stuff coming in for Druid changes. Now, they went into Hunters, Mages, Paladins, Rogues, and Shamans, and Warriors. I play a Druid, so that's why I want to focus a lot on Druids, obviously. But when it comes down to Hunters, Chimera Shot no longer extends the duration of Wyvern Sting's periodic damage. Mages, your Chronostatic Preservation no longer checks for a target within range or line of sight on the first cast. The tooltip states that it has unlimited range, and the part of the ability now does, but the Unleashed Heal has a range of 40 yards, 46 if talented, which is unchanged, so keep that in mind. Paladins, Crusader Strike now deals holy damage instead of physical damage, ignoring armor, and is now afflicted by holy damage prevention. Crusader Strike is still considered a melee attack and not a spell. This is curious to me, all right? You're making a spell no longer do physical damage, now does holy, but it doesn't benefit from increased spell damage because it's not a spell. It's a melee attack. That, I think, will get confusing for people. I don't see how it won't.
It's a little weird. It's hard to know, like, what are the benefits like, especially as we level up through the phases and whatever, because, like, ignoring armor could be huge, or it could not be offset by the fact that you don't affect, the damage scaling. I mean, I guess it would scale from your, I don't know, spell power or something. If it's a melee attack, but not a spell. So is it improved by strength? I don't know. Is it just a strength attack that just does holy instead of physical damage? If so, then I guess this is just good, because ignoring armor is good. Although having holy damage prevented would make it bad, but any situation out of that, it's just better. So this is the kind of weird nitty gritty that you get into with, especially like vanilla WoW combat, that they just sort of have pushed off the table in modern WoW, which is, it's certainly a choice. I kind of like this stuff, these weird like edge cases of this ability has these properties that are different than other similar abilities, whereas stuff in Dragonflight's a little bit more cookie cutter, and I don't think we're moving away from that direction in the future. So, pretty interesting change. I mean, I haven't played Paladin at all in SOD, but this seems like it makes Crusader Strike just straight up better.
Yeah, it could be. I'd hope so. If it ignores armor, it probably does hit a lot harder now. So that's certainly helpful for a lot of people, a lot of players. Redirect for rogues no longer triggers or is affected by the global cooldown, and its cooldown has been reduced by 10 seconds. And they also put an extra note in here just recommending that people don't use redirect, which is the ability used to move combo points around from target to target, in macros. Don't do it in macros with other combo point related abilities. It apparently does not function as expected. Now, I don't know what that means. I just know that it means that it's not functioning the way you want it to function. I don't know if it means that ice cream rains from the sky when you try and do this.
Right.
It's not functioning as expected. So I'm assuming there's just like a variable of things that could go wrong if you choose to do this.
Yeah, it probably, my assumption would be it just means that like you're not going to have reliable, reproducible, consistent behavior with your combo point related, abilities and target switching. So if they're telling you not to do it, it's probably not like a wink and a nudge, like, hey, you should actually do this. Like that's probably not what they're doing here. So yeah, just bear that in mind if you're playing Rogue and trying to set up macros and stuff. Like,
yeah,
you know, they're doing weird stuff to Vanilla WoW in this season, so not everything is just gonna automatically, work in a macro or with some other kind of support.
Right. Just the Flesh Rune for rogues, which is the rogue tank ability, will now generate approximately 30% more threat. So they're allowing rogues to just really pump out a lot more threat as far as this goes. This ability also reduces the damage you take and your chance to be crit and a bunch of things like that. I will say rogues right now are already having trouble with threat. The rogue that's in our group, if our tank missed anything at all as far as a taunt or strikes or hits like that, the rogue would probably pull aggro a lot of the time. So I don't necessarily know if they needed additional threat inside their tank form, if even their DPS form is out-threading full-fledged, tanks. But I will just remind everyone that in Classic, it was not uncommon for someone to just have to stop doing damage. As in, you don't auto-attack. You literally just stop doing damage because you watch your threat and you are gaining on the tank. And there's that threshold of 130% when you're going to pull threat and you don't want to pass it and you just chill out for a little period of time and let them get ahead again. So just bear that in mind. Classic is different from the live game where it's substantially easier to pull threat and it's on the DPS to manage it. It's not the tank's fault if you pull threat. So just bear that in mind. Shamans, the class that I never see because I play Alliance at the moment. Two-handed mastery runes now also provide 10% increased attack speed and 10% increased chance to hit with spells after hitting a target with a two-handed weapon. This is interesting to me. 10% increased chance to hit with spells is massive. Think about it. There's a lot of abilities and skills out there right now that increase your chance to hit by 1%. A lot of the tier sets right now have pieces on them that increase your chance to hit by 1%. And bosses right now in SOD, from what I've been told, are only 2 levels above the max level. They're not 3 levels above like they used to be for a lot of things inside the current state of the game. So 10% chance to hit with spells because you swung your two-hander into a mob is huge. So let's just, keep that in mind when you're a shaman. Even if you're healing and you're using a staff or something like that, be sure that you are standing close enough to a target to smack it every now and then, because then anything you're casting on it, you will hit. 10% chance to hit. It basically will make you hit cap once you get your gear together. So keep that in mind.
10% hit in vanilla combat is unfathomable.
Yeah.
It's such a good buff. Yeah, like you said, 1% would be nice. 1% is desirable. 10% is just obscene. So yeah, probably use that if you're doing two-handed mastery.
Yeah. Shamanistic Rage now grants 5% of the shaman's maximum mana per second instead of value scaling with attack power, spell power, or healing power. So just 5% static is a nice number to know, as opposed to people doing weird scaling things with their abilities. Spirit of the Alpha Rune now grants the shaman an additional 20% increased attack power if they cast the spell on a target other than themselves. That's actually kind of cool as well, so they get to give a boost if they're giving it to somebody else. And they reduce the mana cost of Earth Shield, as well as Power Surge tooltip now is revised to clarify its functionality. This rune periodically grants 5 mana per second, equal to 15% of the shaman's intellect. So I guess that can actually scale, which is kind of neat. Or the periodic effect happens more frequent based off of intellect, one of the two. They didn't really clarify it in that tooltip. I'm just saying some potential timing issues could have sometimes made it give less mana than intended. Okay, so it must be the frequency at which it happens that the intellect increases for players. And then Ancestral Guidance cooldown is reduced to 1 minute from 2 minutes. And then Warriors, your Rallying Cry now correctly benefits the Warriors' entire raid, was just the Warriors party only. I will say my Tranquility spell is still just the party only, and that feels really weird. Just saying, putting it out there. Tranquility is very expensive, and inside of a raid group, it feels pretty weird and weak to use. I tried it this past week. Tranquility is definitely a fairly garbage healing spell at the moment. I'm just putting it out there. So it'd be nice if it hit the whole raid. That would actually add a reasonable amount of value to it. Because otherwise, if you're not inside the same party as the group that's taking damage, the spell is useless. So just, yeah. All right. Green is good during March's trading post. So the trading post was something we wanted to cover this week because we like covering them early in the month to give people that little, push to get in there and start grabbing some stuff for you. The cool stuff that I want to highlight is the Majestic Azure Peafowl. This is a very cool mount. I'm not really sure what exact skeletal body it's sort of sculpted after, but it is a very brilliantly colored, very cool armored flying bird that has a peacock tail on it even. It's very, very neat, and you can ride around and fly it around, and it's certainly one of the ones to go after. It's 750 tender. There's also the Delicate Jade Parasol. If you're someone who did not get your parasol back in Shadowlands, I don't blame you, and you might not want to go back and get it, so you can buy it for 200 Trader's Tender. This is a toy that has a 15-minute cooldown and gives you slow fall for the next 5 minutes, so it lets you sort of jump off cliffs and ledges and that sort of thing and glide around, which is pretty neat. The returning Alabaster and Alabaster Storm Talon and Thunderwing are back. If you didn't get either of these mounts, these are cool-looking sort of stone versions of the classic Alliance and Horde mounts that you can pick up. They're Alliance and Horde only, so there's 650 tender to get the Alabaster Storm Talon, which I believe also just gives you the Thunderwing for the Horde side. I think they're, the same mount, if you will. If you buy one, I don't think you have to buy one on Alliance and then buy one on Horde.
I'm not sure. Yeah, these came in. These were the 15th anniversary mounts. They did that like box set with the rag statue and everything, and the mounts were included with that. So, yeah, it might just be one purchase. I'm not sure, but I haven't looked at the actual post, like the trading post in the game yet this month. They are cool mounts though, and I mean they've been available through other means. This isn't the first time they've been in the shop, but they're cool looking. They're very unique with the sort of they look like moving statues basically, and they're very it's very classic WoW stuff. So it's a cool option if you missed out on them before and you always wanted to have them.
Yeah. There are all these shoulder capes, like over your one right shoulder. There's a bunch of capes that just sit over your one right shoulder that you can choose to get as well. There's a whole aquatic outfit that's all aquamarine colored. That's like a nice sort of leisurely outfit. They have the Lost Crown of the Arcane, which is a cool crown you can wear, as well as the Guise of the Royal Masquerade and the Guise of the Shining Masquerade, which are masquerade masks, which some people might love. The Sky Captain's formal attire is back. If that's something that you're wanting to earn or buy, you can get your way up there. Something that I want to highlight as a really cool weapon is the Blackrock Executioner. This is a ginormous polearm, and I was mentioning to Jason, this is one of those polearms that I haven't seen since Warlords of Draenor. There was challenge mode weapons in Warlords of Draenor that were ginormous weapons that I'm really sad I didn't end up getting all of. This is a great way to get one of these huge, huge weapons if you're someone who just loves that kind of look and feel. The Blackrock Executioner should be on your list. It's only 150 tender too, so worth picking up. We both talked about the corroded Agari Defender. This is the Agari Defender that was the purple, very modern, I guess is the term I would use, looking shield that existed back in Burning Crusade. It is this version has basically sat probably in some fell or some sort of grove for a period of time. It's become very green. There's crystals that have chipped off it. It's got some wear and tear to it. It's very cool looking. Great weapon or shield for folks to pick up. If you're into that, I think it's a very wicked one. And I keep seeing Quel'Serra remakes. This is the Arsenal Skyblades are back. This is the main hand offhand that just look like Quel'Serra, which I'm down for. I'm looking forward to people diving into phase 3 of Season of Discovery and actually starting to get Quel'Serras. I think that's going to be a really neat thing for people to sort of hop into activity-wise. And then the month's reward, the month for this one is Teely. It's basically a little cool little mouse dude who gets to hang out with you, who's awesome. So be sure you're finishing up to get your little mouse pet that you might want to have at your side running around. I hope this mouse pet, or at least they start including pets that are more like Pepe that can actually be on your character. I think it'd be fun if this guy ran up your leg and then sat on your shoulder or something. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it's some kind of unique interaction. Yeah. I mean, we've gotten some really cool bonus rewards, and just a pet is not.
It feels strange, right? That's why I'm some of the interaction
would be cool. There's not enough juice with just a pet. It's a cool looking pet, and it reminds me of honestly, it reminds me of kind of Zaralik Cavern, Loam Niffin kind of thing.
Yes.
It's a nice model. It's pictured. Where is that? It's the photos. Is that in Crystal Song Forest or is that in Azure Span? And it has sort of this arcane magic glow around it. It's a cool looking pet. I don't know the theming is not real strong this month, which is fine. I mean, like last month, everything was on that love is in the air, Valentine's Day, you know, February kind of thing, and I didn't really like that. And this month, I guess there's some like green stuff, I guess, for like St. Patrick's Day and everything, but yeah, like it's kind of all over the place in some other ways, which is cool. You know, the variety is cool, but really, there's nothing here that I'm like, oh, I need this. Trading Post is a weird feature for me because there's certain types of aesthetics that really speak to me, and then when they're on there, I really want that, and I kind of just tone, you know, I kind of zone everything else out, and I sit on thousands of tender because it's like I like what I like, and then when that's there, then I buy it, and then otherwise I just kind of don't. So I think it's been a really cool addition to the game, and it's a cool way to deliver, you know, different kinds of rewards to players, let players pick what kind of stuff they're interested in, and, you know, reward them for checking out different activities in the game. But I'm not one of those people who like burns through their tender right away when the shop opens for the month, and then I'm like, oh, what am I going to do now? You know, I just don't. That's kind of not how I have found the feature to be. I thought maybe when we had the class-specific stuff come in at the end of 23, that was going to be the thing for me where it's like, okay, this is what I got to do. But then I started buying them, and I'm like, these don't match. Like, I can't use these weapons with this armor, so I'm not doing any more of this, you know? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm interested to see where they go. Like, they obviously had a really strong plan for the first year of the system with, you know, the transmog set that matched the mount that was the bonus reward the first month, right? So it was like kind of this whole journey that you went through to get all of these pieces put together. And, you know, there were some really cool thematic bonus rewards and stuff. And it's got to be a lot of burden to come up with this stuff. I mean, it's a lot of, you know, custom assets sometimes that need to be added like every month. So, you know, we'll see how the feature kind of continues into the future. But this month, there's really not like, I'll probably buy the Skyborn Blades. I like the fact that you get 2 different swords, and, you know, one-handed swords are very useful to me in terms of the way that I play the game. Like, I could get some mileage out of one-handed sword mog maybe, but other than that, there's not much from like, oh, I got to get in and get that. Like, it's, you know, it's there. I'll check it out, but that's probably it for me.
Yeah, I do want to buy a lot of stuff this month. I don't think the pet is certainly a motivator for me because I do like collecting the pets. I don't feel like there's a full month's worth of tender here that I really want to spend. Although the fact that they keep bringing stuff back definitely intrigues me, because I've seen many people now express on social media, I need more tender than what I can earn in a month. And, you know, when Blizzard starts seeing stuff like that, I'm sure they're more tempted to do things like they did with those bracelets where you could get 500 tender for buying a, you know, cosmetic item off of their store, and allowing people to sort of start buying that tender and doing it, which I think is a decent, I personally would have no issue with them going, hey, if you want to just spend money and get tender, that's fine. Because you can earn it in game. There's a very direct, easy way by just literally playing the game on a regular basis. You can max out your tender for the month. As long as they don't increase the costs of things so that people currently who buy 2 or 3 items a month can't buy those 2 or 3 items because they can only buy 1, because otherwise you have to buy tender on the store to get all the stuff you want regularly. And you're not going to see it again for months and months and months. There's this push and like pressure to sort of spend money on buying tender. As long as they keep it fairly consistent, I'm okay with it. I would be fine with them adding in cosmetics every now and then that people do. I don't think they need a store option to just specifically buy tender. Like, hey, get 10,000 tender for $100. Like, I don't think that's something that they need to do. That to me is ugly. But I'm fine with them going, hey, you know what? We're going to put out this transmog set. This transmog set's going to come with 500 additional tender. That stuff, I think I'm more okay with now after seeing how the system works and has been consistently working.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anything that you add to the cash shop is always going to be controversial with this game, for sure. Yeah. I think it would be cool if they would give just more opportunities to earn bonus tender.
I would love that.
Maybe not every month, but like maybe quarterly. Like, hey, you get extra. You can get extra points this month from doing extra activities or whatever. Or have some kind of traders holiday where it's like, hey, there's a 2-week long event where even if you're capped, you can earn as many. You know, what do they call them? Like the Traveler's Log entries. Like, you could fill out as many of those as you want for this 2-week period, and you'll get tender for each one. Or, you know, you'll move the tender bar up, and for however many points you get X amount of tender. Like, I think they could incorporate stuff like that into the gameplay more, which would be really cool. And I think people would respond to that a lot if it was like, oh, it's like, it's Trader's Holiday. Like, let me get in there and I'm gonna go do some dungeons. I'm gonna go do some old content, or whatever the little Easter egg kind of things they put in the log to do. That could be a really cool option, just to give people stuff to check out in game. I mean, I hear what you say. There's people who are like starved for Tender, who are on the complete opposite side of the spectrum from me, where like I have thousands of it that I don't really want to spend. An opportunity for them to earn more through gameplay, I think, would be really cool. But I don't know. I don't know like what the. Yeah, it's weird. The financials of keeping the trading post going, it's got to take a lot of labor to make assets to put in there, and you're not really making any additional money off of it because you don't have that like currency store like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And we saw them come in with those little bundles that had some Tender, but they backed off of that really quick, and they haven't included it with the new transmog bundles and stuff they put in the shop lately. So I don't know what the concerns are there in terms of. I mean, maybe it's just there aren't like budgetary concerns around it, and the trading post doesn't have to pay for itself or whatever because they're just making assets for the game that they're going to use. So I don't know.
It'd be neat to see something like it's sort of what they did with the backpack, where you get a larger backpack because you have an authenticator on your account. If they're like, you get a larger backpack and you can earn 200 more Tender a month if you have an authenticator on your account.
Oh man,
right?
Yeah, that would be just like, whatever you could do to get people to put 2FA on their Blizzard accounts, please. Yeah, it's just anything.
Yeah. Like I think that to me would be a worthwhile thing, because then the majority of WoW players, I feel like, have an authenticator on their account, and if that's the case, then you guys just get the cap just goes up by 200. That's great. Everyone can earn 200 more Tender a month, but it also encourages people to actually put the time into putting an authenticator on their account, because you're going to get more stuff out of that. So I think I could see something like that too. All right, so we got to look at hero talents, and this is still in the works, but we do know that we sort of have a defined direction that people can go and explore for what's happening with Elun's Chosen Druid, Windstalker Druid, Scale Commander Evoker, Herald of the Sun Paladin, Templar Paladin, Trickster Rogue, Diabolist, Warlock, and Colossus Warrior are all now talent trees you can actually go and click on from the link. So basically you go to the link through the show notes if you want, and over on the World of Warcraft website they have drop down menus for each of the specs I just listed, and the very top of that drop down menu kind of defines what it's going to do for each of the specs. And then obviously as you explore and spend points into this talent tree, it improves those effects in different ways. So for the Druid one for Elun's Chosen, we see that Full Moon for balance calls down 2 minor moons that deal astral damage and generate 3 astral power. For Guardian, Lunar Beam now causes you to leech life equal to 10% of all damage dealt to enemies within the beam. And for both those specializations, you get Fury of the Loon now ends with a flash of energy. Hopefully this is not a blinding flash of energy. I'm just putting it out there. I don't want flashbangs going off. Blasting nearby enemies with for astral power. So I think this is kind of like a neat starting one, and then you sort of branch down into the different trees where like Moonfire does more damage, and Moonfire and Starfire both generate more astral power, and Bear Form and Moonkin Form reduce arcane damage taken by 6% and all other magic damage taken by 3%. And like you can sort of see how it works down that way of being Elun's Chosen, and I think that's kind of a neat thing to sort of have a look at when it comes to these different talent trees. So if you're someone who wants to see what they're thinking and cooking up for your spec, and you're one of the classes that I mentioned, be sure to dive into these talent trees and have a look at all the different changes coming in here. Now, Jason, they did Colossus Warrior. Did you have a chance to look at this Colossus Warrior stuff?
I did a bit, but honestly, it's really hard for me to wrap my brain around this stuff without a way to play with it. It's just too abstract for me right now to really have a handle on okay, what do I think about this? I'm kind of just waiting for, for alpha to come out so we can kind of mess with stuff.
I think what I'd emphasize there is saying something like, hey, this increases the damage of this by this percent doesn't mean anything when you can't actually see how it feels.
Yeah.
To do 5% more damage, because depending on how much damage that ability does and how much health the opponent that you're using it on has, you don't know what this is actually going to feel like and whether or not this feels good or bad or too weak or is it worth casting or whatever it is. I think that's an interesting kind of, aspect to kick in there. And they have things like choice nodes as well in here where you're picking between two different options and how it's going to affect things. I think overall the system looks neat, but I'm with you, man. I do think we're still in the spreadsheeting phase, and it can be often very difficult to be like, hey, I know I see this and get excited because I can't wait to do that. When I don't see there's like a big, like full moon as an ability when it was first introduced, you're like, dude, you call down the moon on someone and hit them with it, right?
Like hitting, yeah.
And then you read that and you're like, that sounds crazy. And then you see the graphic for it and you're like, that looks amazing. I really want to use that. That's different than like, hey, when you cast this moon ability, which you all know, it does this other ability, which is kind of, minor graphically to see, and it does some damage, increased damage and resource generation. Like, that's neat, but like, that's not something that you kind of get hyped about until you actually are playing with it and feeling how that flow works. I'll say a great example of that right now in the live game is the tier set for Boomkins at the moment, where you get this huge haste increase to the spells that you're casting when you're outside of your Eclipse to get you back into Eclipse quickly. And the difference between having that tier set and not is incredibly noticeable. And so if you can create feelings like that for characters when you're playing them with things like these, the sort of talent tree hero spec stuff that they're getting into, where you're like, oh man, when I'm not an Elun's Chosen, when I'm a Keeper of the Grove, as opposed to Elun's Chosen, I feel the difference between these. And one could be much more, hey, you know what? I just take barely any damage when I'm a Druid of the Claw. But man, when I'm Elun's Chosen, I feel like I can really pump. And like that kind of feeling between the two will create these specs and that hype around these specs when people start playing them and dabbling with them.
Yeah, I think it's a big part of it. I mean, one of the cool things that they're doing with Colossus here that they previewed is they're really leaning into like Shockwave being a core part of your identity in that spec. And Shockwave is one of my favorite abilities for a long time. And it's been kind of de-emphasized lately in Dragonflight. Like you still take it in dungeon situations, but it's sort of playing a back seat to Thunderous Roar, which is like your AoE damage ability. But then there's also this element of there's kind of like a mini game that you're playing with this like active ability that they're bringing in through the system. And so, my immediate kind of reaction to getting a new button is always bad. I don't want new buttons, man. I have so many buttons. But, this is the kind of thing that we'll play with and see how it works in different situations. It's going to change a lot before the game actually comes out. So that's just stuff that, going into that, I know that, and I know that about myself. It's like I'm not going to get too up or down about any of this stuff, but they're doing like I think the cool thing is the ability that this gives them to add kind of that flavor that you're saying. I think it comes out more than just how it feels to switch between the hero specs potentially. Like one of these warrior talents. Part of what the talent does is just increases your character's size by 5%. Because you're a Colossus, you're just bigger. Like that's cool. I love that flavor and kind of that more role-playing game aspect of it. The weird thing is a thing that I've seen a lot of. Like I haven't really been diving into the discourse, but one thing that people seem to be saying a lot is that they feel that the hero trees are too transformative and moving too far away from the core of the WoW class as we know it. That to me, that's a little weird. I'm ready. I want some more flavor and I want some more variety, and I want to dive into some of these sub archetypes and that we've kind of had established in the Warcraft universe predating WoW. Certainly like Mountain Thane and Colossus and worse. I mean, Mountain Thane probably more than anything. That really harkens back to Warcraft 3 in a way that really hasn't come through in World of Warcraft up to this point. This is not stuff that's going to be around forever, presumably, right? Like these will probably get shut off or something when we move into, midnight, or something's going to be different. So to me, the exciting part is mixing up that flavor, mixing up the visuals, the theming, kind of transforming that gameplay. I'm looking forward to that. Like I want that. I want the system to deliver that. But it seems like a lot of people that I'm seeing right now who are like diving into this stuff are more concerned with the nitty gritty, like, tuning adjustments, and like they don't want to rock the boat. They just want their spec to be better. And I understand where that comes from, I guess, but that is not how I'm looking at this at all. Like I want to do stuff that feels and looks cool to do and makes me feel like a different, maybe more specialized type of warrior inside the game than my warrior was in the previous expansion, you know? Like, that's sort of what I'm looking for as a player out of the system. And I expect the developers will make the rest of the systems hang around that, you know? Like, that's their job, is to make that feel good in the context of doing a raid or doing a Keystone dungeon or whatever. So,
yeah.
I don't know. That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. And really, I'm not getting too into the weeds with it until I have something I can play. I mean, I assume that we'll probably see alpha before too much longer. It's March now. They were talking like springtime for alpha.
Yeah.
The official start of spring is only a couple weeks away now. So I don't think it'll be too long until we can start digging into some of this stuff. You know, it'll still be early, but just to get an idea of like, okay, what does this look like? What does it feel like? What are my options in practice? Like, how does option A feel versus option B when it comes to my hero talents? And that's pretty cool. I always like that phase of like, oh wow, so this works like that, or this works with this talent, and then this happens. Like, that's always a cool part of the process as we're discovering what a new expansion is going to be.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last developer post we want to talk about here is a season discovery one. So I'm just cautioning everyone. Now, I'm not going to like dig into this entire thing. It's massive. So I'm going to do highlights for folks so that they can know what's going on. Because I know that this is not necessarily, everyone's bread and butter as to what they're looking forward to, but it's something I mentioned at the top of the show. We're getting an XP and leveling buff, basically starting on March 5th with maintenance. You get to get the Discoverer's Delight experience buff, which will enable on all realms increasing experience gained from level 1 to 39 by 100%. This is up from 50%. This is a buff that they intended to make go live when Phase 3 launched. However, they're just moving it up and having it go live now because they want to encourage people and make that leveling process easier for not just players who have already leveled up to max level, bringing their alts up, but for new players maybe coming back and wanting to dabble into it a bit. Alongside this buff, they're also reducing the cost of racial mounts and mount training to roughly half of what it is at level 40. They do not have plans to change anything around epic mounts at level 60 at this time, but keeping that in mind. And then lastly, they're going to be increasing the base gold reward from all quests while players are level 1 to 39, so that you get more gold that you earn on your way up. Now, obviously, this doesn't help me with my broke ass at 6 gold on, my character. But it does help a lot of other people with what they're doing when they're leveling up. Maybe I'll level my mage so that he can fund my druid. I do kind of wish that they would just send everyone who's max level 40 gold or something like that, just to help everyone out, and it would change the economy. Yeah. I think that'd be really nice because it was super expensive to buy that stuff, and it made me totally broke. And so now they're fixing it to change that. It kind of feels like, oh, that's really too bad. Anyways. Going forward, they're also looking at adjusting the leveling when it comes to Phase 3 launches, with the level cap going up to 50. So they're keeping that in mind, and they'd like to continue to make adjustments to help smooth over the leveling curve for alts a bit more, and to help those level a bit slower, to help those who level a bit slower to nudge them over the finish line. Raid size at 60. This is the next part. So that's the first part, leveling people up, making them save more gold, making stuff more accessible. All good things, all things that I wish had been live at the very beginning of all this, because I know I would have benefited from it massively, because right now the consensus very much is, don't bother questing. Questing isn't worth it. Just go into Scarlet Monastery and live there until you're max level. It is substantially faster. In a lot of cases, it's faster to just sit in a zone and just kill mobs without questing at all to level up than it is to quest. I'm just like, that is actually the case, which is very strange. So I'm hoping these changes they're putting in actually help a lot of that, because it is very weird to have questing, which you think would be like the main way to level, be the worst way to level. Feels very strange at the moment. So raid size at level 60. The yet to be announced level 50 raid is going to be a 20-player raid. They're also going to make Molten Core a 20-player experience inside of Season of Discovery. So expect that 40-man raids are going away. We're probably not going to see those at all. We're probably going to see 20-man. I think this is good. I think overall this is good. I think this will be a lot less pugging. I think what would have happened most likely for a lot of these teams, the vast majority of teams, is they would have had their 10 players or 12 players that they naturally have for their raid, and then they would have had to try and just merge with another group whenever they want to raid something, or bring in a whole bunch of random people whenever they want to raid something. And I think that's unfortunate when it comes to raid size, because if you are a 12-person raid and you merge with another 12 to 15-person raid, and then you pug in 10 people or whatever, it can feel a lot less exciting and fun than raiding with the group that you've been raiding with for the last 2 phases. So I think 20 is a decent number. I think in some cases, some people have to pug a couple of people, but it'll still feel like your main group. I think that's a healthy spot to be. So I like seeing 20, and that makes the most sense when it comes to raid sizes. Okay. The itemization changes happening happening at level 60. They're planning on rolling out some changes here. They say one thing we've not talked about yet is our thoughts around level 60 endgame rewards and the very significant changes we have planned there, and that may be a key piece of missing context to help illustrate their philosophy on the different raid sizes that they're going to be doing. The current plan to revamp many items from dungeons and raids, including the existing 20-player raids at level 60, and they're going to be adding new items across all the phases of endgame, and a ton of exciting playstyles that are new or traditionally seen as off-specs that have been given life in Season Discovery and will come into their full power at level 60. We want to itemize as well for as many different builds and playstyles as we were able to in the time that they have. So the big thing they're sort of emphasizing here is almost what it feels like. This is where my brain always goes when I read notes like this, is the Covenant system inside of Shadowlands when it came to your mission table. Everything for the mission table inside Shadowlands was designed around being at your maximum level. And I very much feel like stuff inside Season of Discovery was designed around being at level 25 and being at level 60. And the 40 thing was kind of like we fit this in the middle. And so I think that we're going to get a much better experience for a lot of these specs and how things feel at 60 than we are currently at 40. And I think that we're going to see a much more fleshed out version of these specs. And as they say, these items that you're going to be getting are going to be things that are designed around Warlock and Rogue tanks. They're going to be things that are designed around Mage healers. And you're going to see a lot more of that sort of fit better for the classes and for the runes that you're using. So I'm excited to see what the completed version of these characters looks like. And I think overall it's a great post. If you want to read through it, it's, maybe 12 paragraphs long of information that you'll have to dig into. But I think overall it's great to hear the developer side on things. And I'm excited for the changes coming in this week, as well as some of the stuff they have planned for, level 60 once we get there with the 20-player groups and the much more fleshed out classes that feel like they're more complete and finished in that way.
Yeah, this is a huge amount of info from Josh Greenfield last week. It came out like the day after we recorded, I think, right? The last week. So yeah, this is stuff that's been out there for a while now as we're talking about it, unfortunately. Just the timing kind of worked out that way. I am glad to see the XP buff and the leveling changes come in. I have really not played Phase 2 very much at all, and I was pretty gung-ho about Phase 1. Like, I played Phase 1 a bit, like, I was done, I had full raid gear, and I felt really good about where my character was sitting. And I logged into Phase 2 one night and did a couple stockades, and I haven't been back. I don't know if I'm going to do Gnomeregan or anything, and it sounds like, the DJ's crew over on Wild Growth has really spun it down, and the interest just hasn't been there, but this might be the impetus for people to get back in and check it out, and if not, then at least it's a streamlined way to stay current in case Phase 3 feels like the thing to do, or Phase 4 does, so... I'm really glad to see this. I think, like, there is a fine balance to walk here, and that includes stuff like the mount accessibility and also raid size. Like, you want to... Season Discovery is vanilla WoW. It is WoW Classic, right? Like, but it's supposed to have these tweaks and these differences, and it really is going to live and die by how the players react to it, I feel like, and I think it seems like, reading Josh's post, they left themselves some wiggle room about design decisions and what was going to really happen. I think boosting the leveling at this point, I think Season 3 or Phase 3 should just come in with the buff out the gate. Nobody wants to level at this point. Like once we're in the end game loop, we want to be playing in game. But it made sense when when the servers first came up. Okay, level 1 to 25. That's not a very big lift. Like just go do that. But I don't think people want to be leveling in vanilla in little chunks over and over again. I don't think that's proven to be fun. I think the raid size is going to be weird for a couple reasons. I think going from 10 to 20 is going to be tough. I think maintaining, I'm looking at, ZTH. Now, granted, we didn't have a ton of, ZTH is a big community across multiple different games. We didn't have a ton of buy-in on Season Discovery to begin with. We only really had about 20 people that were checking it out. And, so fielding a 20-player raid team is going to be probably tough. And then scaling it up to 40, because from this post, it sounds like the idea is, okay, Molten Core is going to go to 20.
Yeah.
But after that, like we may have like 40-man Nax or whatever.
Or something, right?
Yeah. And it's like, well,
that they have that idea right now. I really do think that is a thing that they are deciding. Hey, you know what? Let's wait and see. And I think what's going to end up happening is they're going to hit max level, and it's going to be very clear that what the community wants is at most 20-player content.
I
would love to see 10-man Nax. That's what I'd love to see.
Yeah.
I
think for season, it's perfect. Like the big appeal for Season Discovery is, to me, or was at the outset, like the low buy-in, we need to approach this in a different way. Like we're going to breathe life into this content, but like this is not recreating 2004.
Yeah.
This is a game for 2024 and the way that people play it and the way that WoW players live, like WoW players are older, and life is different, and having that accessibility and just like pick up and play thing is huge. And 40-player raids, I think, are counter to that. I could see like, we'll leave like 40-man Nax in there and it'll have all the stuff in it, but there's a Season of Discovery Nax or whatever that's like 10-player or 20-player. Like that could be cool. Obviously the itemization changes thing. They're creating a lot of new playstyles inside of Season of Discovery, and we've talked on the show before about how like itemization just in general in Vanilla WoW was really weird, and there were weird gaps and stuff that just didn't really make any sense. So like I'm glad that they want to actively support these different playstyles that they're sort of creating or emerging from the stuff they put in the game. I think it's really important to make it healthy, to make it a thing that can continue to live on, and it sounds like there's plans for phases like post phase 4 level 60, or maybe some continuation of Season Discovery into a different sort of lifespan, whether that's like Season of Discovery 2 and then you roll your character into Burning Crusade or whatever, who knows, whatever it could be. Your mind can go wherever, but it sounds like this is just the beginning in terms of like their development plans. And I think the important thing is, Josh kind of wraps it up with a paragraph about like feedback and what they can do, what they can't do, and what they want to do. And I do think that we've seen the SOD team flex a lot over the last like 3 months since it's been up, of kind of just working on the experience, trying to dial stuff in to make it as fun as it could possibly be, or to respect your time or whatever. I think that is the key to the ongoing success of these realms. It's like you have to understand that like for a lot of people who want to check this out, they have like 2 hours a week to play it, maybe, this is not, people can't, if you want this to succeed at a level that it really could, because it is a fresh and really fun take on the game, like you need people to be able to get in and get out, get what they want out of the experience and have fun with it and connect with other players, and I think they hit that pretty decently well with phase 1, but then phase 2 was so close on its heels for me. It's like I haven't been able to find the enthusiasm to get in there and kind of soft reset the character level back up and go through all that stuff again with no real perks other than the gear I came out of raid with. So I don't know. I'll probably be jumping in there this week. The buff goes live tomorrow in NA, and maybe I'll start getting some quests done and start working my way back up, and then we'll see where we go. And I think maybe a good thing too would be let's phase 2 breathe a little bit longer, because players have kind of disengaged. Maybe we don't need a 2-month-long phase before we just jump right back in there. Like let's give it a good couple months. Give it 4 months, or whatever to kind of percolate and let people get in there and get what they want out of it. That'd be huge for me if we could stretch out that that time span a little bit.
Yeah, everyone has a different opinion on how long a phase should be. Like I said, there's people out there who are like, all right, we've hit max level, we've done Nomer, we've seen all the content. Like, give me 3 more weeks of this and let's hop into something new. Like, there's people who are in that mentality. And then there's, people like yourself who are like, no, just leave me in here for 4 months and I'll have a good time and play when I can play. And what it comes down to for me is these leveling changes. For me, I think it took me over 50 hours to get to max level from 25 to 40. Like, you're trimming that down to 20-hour period. I think that's great. If you're making the game more enjoyable because you can hit max level easier, that's great. If I can take that 20 hours and make it 12 or 14 because I just sat in Starlit Monastery on my alt and maxed them out, that's great too. Like getting to 40 in a day would be great, So those are all good changes. But yeah, when it comes down to the length of the phase and what's happening with it, I do think engagement plays a part. I do think at a certain point you're like, okay, we don't want the players who are excited about getting into the new thing to essentially go 4 months and have zero interest in engaging in the new thing because they've just moved on to something else. But we also don't want the players who are only able to play, as you said, like 2 hours a week or whatever it is, to then end up in a situation where they always feel behind and like there's no point in getting to max level and doing anything because they're just going to move on to the next phase so quickly. So yeah, balancing that's going to be a tricky thing for the team.
It's a tough job, and obviously there's no like one size fits all solution, and there's not one thing that's right for like all players. But I think like there are some things they could do. Like certainly the leveling changes kind of indicate this, that there's changes you can make that are going to benefit like the biggest amount of players or make the product the most attractive to the biggest amount of customers, right? I think that's a big part of something super niche like SOD having legs, it's just I have a bunch of people from retail guild and everything. I'm like, you should play Season Discovery, they don't want to get into it. But I mean, now like with double XP all the way up to 39, man, like it's, I don't know, just for the experience of checking that out with the runes and everything. I mean, I think that prospect just got a lot more attractive.
I agree. All right, let's take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. And today I'm giving a shout out to Aliana, Sarajian, Celian, James, Kapawi, Max, Skazgrin, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for everything you give, as well as all of our patrons. Thank you for everything you give. You help continue the show running on the air and paying all the bills and all the hosting and all that kind of stuff. That's where the patron money goes. So thank you so much for everything that you all give. It means a lot to us. And if you're trying to find our Patreon, it's at patreon.com/thestartingzone. And you can hop in there and show your support that way if that's something you would like to do. No new patrons this week to mention, so there is space for next week's episode. If someone wants to hop in and become a patron, we will mention you on here as one of our fresh crew that hopped in to help support the show. So thank you to all of our patrons and everyone who supports us. We always appreciate it, and it keeps us making these episodes every week.
Absolutely. Thank you, patrons, past and present, for supporting the show and helping us make it the best it can be, and keeping the feed online for all of you and updating it as much as we possibly can. It does mean a lot. It's a very important part of keeping the show on track. So thank you for the support. Yeah.
Another great way to support the show is leaving us a 5-star review over on iTunes, your Apple Podcast. They really help out our show as well, raising us up those charts and more people finding the episodes. And we have caught up on our reviews. So if you want to actually get out there and leave us a 5-star, it'll be on the next episode. We'll read it right here. And you can hear us read what you wrote about our show. And we always appreciate the support that we get from those. And we love hearing from you guys, particularly those overseas and in different areas of the world. We like all of our reviews, but it's always neat to hear from folks who are listening and areas of the world that we often don't think about as like, hey, yeah, this is part of our community, and reminding us that, yes, we do have that reach and there are people out there who listen. And thank you to all of our listeners. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah, for sure. Making the show really boils down to the two of us getting in a Discord call and just kind of putting stuff out there. And, we don't really know. We don't always know what people do with it, once it's out there. So it's always cool to hear from people from anywhere that are grabbing the show and enjoying it. So thank you all. Yeah, we had a huge backlog of reviews to get through, at the end, that came at the end of 23, which was really awesome. And so thank you to everybody who wrote in. We don't really want to read more than one at a time. time because it doesn't turn into like super great radio. But we do want to say thank you. So yeah, it was really nice. I mean, we've gotten a ton of reviews on the feed over the years, and it helps with discoverability so much. It helps bring new people in our community. So thank you.
Yeah. That's going to wrap up episode 621 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. That's where you can find the links to all of the things we mentioned in this episode as far as posts go. So if you're trying to find those new hero talent trees, that's where you can find the link to them. And that's the cool thing about this is in 2 years, when we're all heavily deep into the new content and we're waiting for the next new thing to come out, you can go, where did they come from and where did they end up with some of this developer stuff? Because those posts and those links will still exist on that website. You can go and check.
Go back and look at that and go, do you believe what they were thinking for Colossus Warrior
crazy,
back in February of 2024?
As if they thought they were going to make them 10% bigger. Now we can't fit through doorways on our mounts. What is this? Yeah.
That's the really fun stuff with that super early development.
They designed a boss where you have to be mounted on a dragon and fly it around, and we couldn't fit through the openings because we were 10% bigger as Colossus. What were they thinking? Right, like that, that's a thing.
It's great for stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, if you want to contact the show and leave us your feedback or ask a question, you can email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com or reach out to us on Twitter at thestartingzone or over on Discord. Thestartingzone.com/Discord is the link that'll get you to the button you click to join our Discord server, and you can chat with us over there. If you want to get your hands on some TSC swag, you can do that through TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/the Starting Zone, where we got shirts and stickers and stuff like that you can pick up. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
Best place to find me is always over on Twitter. You can find me over there at Shieldwald. You can also find me over on Blue Sky. I'm just Jay Lucas over there. I haven't been posting on Blue Sky, but I am over there and I do scroll it a little bit. But so come say hi in either of those places. Blue Sky is like quickly just becoming what Twitter used to be. So I don't know. I'm just waiting for the critical mass where it's like, oh, we just use this now. But
yes,
for the time being, that's how it is. And you can check my video channels out at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. They have been very quiet this winter. I have been ill and not at my best, and streaming has not been very appealing to me, but perhaps we'll get back into it soon. Maybe when 10.2.6 comes out, if there's like fun stuff to do, maybe we'll throw that up on the stream. So come check it out over there too.
Yeah. You can find me on the interwebs at Spencer_Downey on Twitter. I'm Spencer HD on Blue Sky. I'm Spencer HD on Twitch. I am at Spencer HD on YouTube. So you can find all of those places. And yeah, I'm also at that point where I'm like, all right, at a certain point, I'm going to start some sort of a push to shift everyone who follows me on Twitter over to Blue Sky and start using that more. And we'll figure out when that happens. But for now, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening and jobs done.